Okay, good morning. Welcome to Special Committee of the Whole meeting. It's January 15th, 2025, just a little after 11:30. We're here today to have a confirmation hearing for Rodney Hairston, who is here as a potential new finance director. The way this works is the mayor makes an appointment to finance and the city council confirms that appointment based on the information we get both electronically and in this interview. Mayor, Mr. Hairston.
Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Call the roll.
call roll.
I always like to just get right into it, right? Eddie, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Maddox,
Here.
Posh, Russell. Here. Kuda,
Here?
Cobb,
Here.
Larson. Here. Petrus.
Here. All right, thank you. And now, Mayor, would you like to make an introduction?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So I'm very, very excited to present the possibility of bringing Rodney G. Hairston on as our finance director here in the city of Cleveland Heights. As everybody by this point, well, probably not everybody, but many people by this point recognize and know, we are in need of a permanent finance director. We need somebody who can join the team, become an integral part of the team, and work with us in the long term to develop our strategies, our practices, and make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do in order to be a strong, financially strong city for the foreseeable future. And I believe that Mr. Hairston is that candidate. As I mentioned before, when we spoke about this before, Mr. Hairston is probably the most well-prepared candidate I've interviewed for any position. His experience, I believe, speaks for itself, and I encourage you to, refer to Mr. Hairston's resume, and certainly gain clarity about his experience from him. But the varied experience from the most recent experience in sort of nonprofit educational sector, through a great deal of municipal experience and government experience generally at different levels of government, both at the county level and at the city level, I think speak very well to his ability to join our team and hit the ground running with an understanding, a deep understanding based on years of experience in municipal finance. So I think with that, I want to express my gratitude to Mr. Hairston for being willing to take on this role here in the city of Cleveland Heights. I think that over certainly the short, medium, and especially the long term, this city will benefit immensely from his contribution. And when I say that, I want to be clear. We've got specific issues that we want to address right now. In the medium term, we want to build our practice in finance to be more standardized, to be more in line with expectations in a 21st century government. And I think that Mr. Hairston can bring us along that path. But additionally, in the long term, looking at the way other jurisdictions pursue finance, budgeting, we've got room to grow into the ways that we should be communicating this information, developing this information, and using this information for future planning, the financial information. And I believe that Mr. Hairston as well is a really fine candidate for that. I anticipate that working with Mr. Hairston, we will be developing ways of analyzing data and forecasting, and then using that financial data to be a little bit better at predicting, be a little bit better at utilizing our available resources in ways that are most advantageous for the city and keep us in a safe position. I think the ability that he's shown in the course of his career to do this kind of work, I don't know, I almost can't find the words because of how excited I am. So I'll leave it at that. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Hairston to provide an introduction to himself and his work.
Good morning, council members.
Morning.
So is there a particular format?
If you'd like to make an opening statement, you can do that, or we can go into questions. That's up to you.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited in this opportunity. Having spent a decade of my career working in government, I think has prepared me for this position, and I'm looking forward to a number of different things that I feel areas where I can add value in terms of the annual CAFR, putting together annual budgets, financial reporting, and getting information to the council members where they have a good sense of where we stand financially.
Very good, thank you. I assume that all the council members and Councilman Posh just joined us, so let the record show that, have read your resume. Maybe you could start with just a little bit of the highlights of your resume, because I think what most of the questions, and I'm certainly not Nostradamus here, but I think in hearings a lot of times the questions tend to be more about like how you think and so forth, because we do know your credentials, but if you could state them so we could just kind of get that part out of the way, and then we'll get into the questions.
Okay, I completed my undergraduate work at the University of Akron, where I studied business administration. I finished my graduate work at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. Upon graduation, I relocated to the Dallas-Fort Worth area and spent 5 years with American Airlines. And this is where I really cut my teeth in terms of learning how to prepare budgets and doing financial analysis. After 5 years, I relocated to the Seattle, Washington area and spent a couple years with Microsoft Corporation, again, doing budgets, doing financial analysis. I went to a startup called Avondale Healthcare in Seattle, spent 6 years there. In 2006, I relocated back to Northeastern Ohio for personal reasons, family reasons, and took a position with First Energy Corporation, again, doing financial analysis, preparing budgets. I also worked at a nonprofit, the University of Akron University Park Alliance, again, doing projections, forecasts, and an analysis. In 2013 is where I began my career in government. And I took a position with the city of Cleveland at the Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. There, I brought a copy of the CAFR. I did 8 different CAFRs. I prepared the annual budget. We went through a lot of turbulence during the time that I was there. Many of you know that in 2014, the airport was dehubbed when United merged with Continental Airlines, so we lost our hub status. In 2015, we went through a real bad winter, and we had to defer flights to Pittsburgh. And because of the fact that our runways were not properly de-iced, we were fined $750,000 by the FAA. That led to the resignation of our CEO. We brought in a new CEO. In 2019, on Easter Sunday, the airport was hit with a Easter egg, which was a ransomware attack, which almost shut down the entire airport. Our flight information display boards had no information on them. We ran that airport for almost 3 weeks without computers. We lost all data, all email. And then 11 months after that, we got hit with COVID. And that did shut the airport down for a bit. And that was my tenure there. I spent almost 8.5 years there. But again, did a really excellent job. Was always recognized by both CEOs for the expertise that I brought to the airport, and worked on a lot of great projects while I was there. I left there and went to the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. I left the airport reluctantly, but one of the things that, one of my career aspirations, one of my career goals was to work in the role of as a chief financial officer. So I spent time with the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and most recently, I worked as chief financial officer at St. Martin de Porres High School. Again, doing the $11 million annual operating budget, overseeing IT, overseeing food service operations, overseeing building maintenance, vehicle maintenance, and other responsibilities. And that leads us up to today.
Well, thank you very much. And now I'll look for questions from council. Anybody like to go first?
Actually, Mr. President, just very briefly, I did want to mention that City Administrator Horrigan is also here. Mr. Horrigan was part of the interview panel interviewing Mr. Hairston. So he can be on hand to provide input as well if there are any other questions that aren't for me or Mr. Hairston. Mr. Horrigan may also be able to provide some.
All right, thank you. Councilman Maddox?
No question. I just didn't know if you wanted me to hand out anything that you had. I know you had some handouts. Did you want us to pass anything down? I could grab it. I didn't know.
Yeah, I did bring some examples of my work.
Okay. I can do that.
All right. Yeah, I definitely don't want to. Okay, any questions? I'm going to make sure, I don't know if I'm going to do any reading right now, but go ahead, Councilwoman Larson.
Thank you, President Kuda.
Sure.
Welcome, Mr. Hairston.
Thank you.
I am impressed with your educational background and appreciate the fact that you got that master's from Weatherhead School of Management. I would like to ask you about your certification because I don't see a CPA on your record.
That is correct. I am not a CPA.
What led you to the decision that you did not want to pursue that particular line of certification?
That is something that throughout my career, I take a look at, but it's just something I never considered. Just kind of working through the various roles that I had in various financial capacities, I just felt that the skill sets that I was obtaining as I was going along through the path of different positions, I felt that my Weatherhead education and what I was learning on the job would suffice.
I think I'd like to speak a little bit to that and maybe provide an opportunity for Mr. Horrigan too as well. We took a look at that concept as well, the desirability of a CPA in this position. And some finance directors in municipalities are CPAs. We did sort of a bit of an analysis about not only which finance directors are versus are not CPAs in our general area, but we also took a look through the job postings listed at the GFOA website, nationwide looking at finance director job postings for municipalities of all sizes. What we found is that overwhelmingly CPAs are not required. I would say probably universally in the job postings that we looked at, and it was dozens. And not required, but generally what you would see is a requirement for a bachelor's in finance or accountancy or business administration. And then in the desirable qualifications lists, you would find CPA or a master's degree and a certain amount of experience. Usually it's around 5 years of progressively responsible experience. And we in my office, we did an analysis of current finance directors in the area. And we didn't look at every single finance director. Some of them are a little bit more difficult to find, but we looked at around 47 cities in the area, 47 municipalities in the area. and found that, what was it, 20%?
20%.
Yeah, so 10 out of 47 cities have a finance director that is a CPA, where the vast majority don't have a CPA, but you would expect that the experience that leads someone to the position of finance director would prepare them for the duties of a finance director. And I think in this case, very clear that that chief financial officer position is very well warranted in this case.
Mr. President,
Yeah, please.
can I ask one more question? Then
Absolutely.
you may come back to me after others have had a chance.
Sure.
As we are currently waiting for the state audit results of the city's 2023 financial statements, will you please describe to me your experience with government auditing standards? Were you audited by the state when you were working at the airport under those parameters?
We were audited by the state on an annual basis. So I went through 8 years of audits through the state. They would send up auditors from Columbus, Ohio. They would come into the airport. They would sample our work. They were always very interested in segregation of duties. And, you know, segregation of duties kind of protects you against embezzlement. You don't want to put too much financial responsibility on one individual. But I went through 8 separate audits from the state of Ohio.
All right, the results were all good?
Results were all good.
Other questions? Councilman Cobb?
Thanks for coming in, appreciate it. So do you have any other certifications that relate to the financial field?
Nothing other than my, I have taken additional coursework, seminars, been to various different training conferences over the years. But in terms of a direct certification, I only have my bachelor's degree and my master's degree.
When did you get the master's degree? I'm just curious.
In 1994.
Okay. And do you have any specific familiarity with the Ohio Revised Code provisions that are specific to municipalities when it comes to appropriations, budgeting, taxation?
Yeah, well, we follow those guidelines at the City of Cleveland, those exact same guidelines in terms of, you know, contractual obligations, encumbrances, preparation of funds. So I went through the transition from corporate accounting to governmental accounting, working with the City of Cleveland at the airport.
Okay. And then on your resume, when you were at the airport, were you reporting to a CFO?
I was reporting to Christine Gilmartin, who was still president at the airport, and she's the chief financial officer.
Okay. Was that just at the airport, or was she in charge of both Hopkins and Burke?
She was in charge of both Hopkins and Burke.
Okay. And what software, accounting software systems are you familiar with? Software?
So at the airport, we used the Advantage system, which is the financial system that the City of Cleveland uses. Microsoft Office, Microsoft Excel, you know, VLOOKUP, pivot tables, using PowerPoint to prepare presentations, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Access for creating databases.
Okay. Specific to financial systems, what software do you have experience using?
I've used SAP, I've used Oracle, Oracle Cloud, I've used the QuickBooks and the Advantage system at the City of Cleveland.
Do you know what our system is that we use here?
I believe it's called New World.
Okay. Do you have any prior experience in New World?
I do not.
Okay. Have you taken a look at our software system, the New World system at all?
I have not taken a look at your system, but I have reviewed your most recent audited financials.
Okay. I'll come back. I'll let someone else ask some questions.
Questions? Go ahead. Councilman Posh?
Thank you, and thanks for being here. So at the City of Cleveland, you weren't a chief financial, you worked for a chief financial officer.
That is correct.
So your first role leading a department like Cleveland Heights really kind of comes down to when you were on the Cuyahoga Board of DD. And obviously when you worked for the high school in, is it in Cleveland? I guess it is in Cleveland. At the city, you worked with 3 staff accountants, and so it looks like the largest group of people that you employed, that you were directly responsible for, it looks like was 24 employees at the Cuyahoga County Board of Development and Disabilities. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the majority of those employees were in IT. There are about 8 employees in the finance and accounting area.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of, it should be a pretty simple transition then. I mean, when you've had that level of reporting capabilities.
I would agree.
So one of the things, and we mentioned this as a counselor, I think before today, was basically how the city's org chart looks. And I'd like to get a little bit more comfortable with that. So currently, you would report directly to Mr. Horrigan. Is that how this org chart is going to work?
So I think during Mr. Horrigan's confirmation hearing, we may have addressed some of this as well. I think the first step for me is not to sort of assume that we're going to do things the way that we did them under the previous city administrator or under the previous finance director. I think that when it comes to the setup here, we've already started the conversation about any modifications that might be necessary to our reporting structures. And so I'm having that conversation with the city administrator and directors and chiefs already. And so we're working through that. And I think in this case, we'll probably have the same discussion, assuming Mr. Hairston is confirmed, we'll have that same discussion about what's most appropriate and how best to efficiently affect positively the function of the finance department. So there is room for change there. I think right now, the way the org chart is set up, we have a direct reporting relationship between finance and the city administrator. But that may change. It may become, Mr. Horrigan and I may become more of a team effort in certain respects. Finance may be one of those areas. But we're working through that now. I don't think that's set in stone at this point.
Well, that's obviously your purview and how you want to set it up. But I think, coming in from day one, your candidate is working for Mr. Horrigan, and I just was trying to get a sense of how that looks from a reporting structure. And frankly, it seems to me that's a pretty solid way of moving forward. Where it gets a little bit difficult for me is still with this HR piece. And I know you've spoken a lot about it, and I don't think we need to really dig it up, but I mean, have you had experience, with HR departments? I mean, obviously we all have experience with HR departments, but have you ever led an HR department? And no matter what you said is not going to change my opinion of you. I mean, I respect the fact that the mayor has brought in a qualified candidate. I'm inclined to vote for your appointment because I don't see any glaring problems with it. I'm just trying to get a sense of how it's all going to work. So I'm going with the assumption that you have been appointed. From my perspective, I'm not speaking for council, but how does that HR component look in your eyes right now? Because your HR department is going to be reporting to you.
The honest answer is I've never led an HR department. I will say that I did do a summer internship many years ago in an HR department. And my responsibilities during that time was to bring in candidates and interview them, observe their qualifications. And these were for entry-level positions. I think over the years, we all sort of get a sense of what goes on in the HR department in terms of, many payrolls, systems are ran through HR in terms of developing, salaries and projections for salaries. labor relations, hiring individuals. So I'm very familiar with the functions of an HR department, but I have never led an HR department before in my career.
Okay. I have another question about how you communicate to board members. And sort of, I mean, there's some very, well, I mean board members because they're essentially board members at this point, but it does translate to council members. And I don't believe at the airport I guess here's a question. Did you ever make presentations to the Cleveland City Council members?
So every year, typically in the month of February, we would travel down to the central office for the city of Cleveland and present our annual operating budget to city council. And they always had several questions. It always seemed to be specifically around the areas, they had what I call hotspots, and new furniture was always seemed to be a hotspot with them. They always felt that was a waste of government funds. And then one of the other things that would draw a red flag would be, certain individuals from time to time would find a conference in a warm climate during the winter months, and that would draw attention as well. But, and I think of some of the council members that I interacted with, Zach Reed, Jeff Johnson, Bashir Jones, these were some of the folks that were council members during my tenure with the airport.
So I think what we're trying to do, and again, I can't speak for all of us, but what I'd like to see is sort of a level of building of trust. So it seems like in the past that this council had a very strong relationship with a fiscal officer or fiscal officers. I mean, I feel like we're building a level of trust with our interim finance director. But when it comes to you, is there anything that you can share with us about how we can mutually build a level of trust? Because a lot of it is you get a financial statement or you get a piece of it, or maybe a question isn't quite answered, but we could have a dialogue with a fiscal officer and basically says, hey, look, maybe you're not looking at the whole picture, but I really understand the finances. You're focusing too much on a small number. It's not something you need to worry about, but this is something you do need to worry about. So we're looking for sort of an honest dialogue that we could have with our fiscal officer, realizing everything is not all perfect. It's just not perfect when you look at any operation, and there's negative and positive issues. But is there a way that you can answer? Maybe this isn't the right time. I'd be okay. But how do you propose that you can help us mutually build kind of a trusted relationship with you and your office?
I think one of the most important things would be good, timely financial reporting. I think being able to present council with financial reports that have a high degree of accuracy and integrity. So they're well informed in terms of how money is being spent. They fully understand revenue streams as well as the expense allocations. I think if they get the right financial information in terms of reporting in front of them, they'll have a real good understanding of how well the city of Cleveland Heights is doing.
So one of the things, and this is my last comment, that I'd be hopeful for is the third quarter financial statements just sort of got dropped on the city website without any presentation to council on where we were. And I would hope for future financial statements and how they're released, that there is some part of a council meeting and a director's in a director's part of the council meeting, which very rarely gets used, that you'd be able to come to us and present to us financial statements and talk about the good and the bad. And we were in a meeting last night where there are things to celebrate when it comes to our financial statements, but there's also work to be done in other areas of them. I would like to see more of that, because I think if it is prompt and you come to meetings, it just sort of helps build that trust. So I'm very happy with that response. But I'm hopeful as we continue forward, like when our next set of financials, which hopefully are going to be available to us on the 21st after our conversation last night in the Finance Committee, that we could have some presentation from you. Obviously, you're just coming into a role. I'm not expecting that conversation happening this month, but I hope to have it in the future with you.
Will do.
Other questions? Councilman Petrus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Harrison, thank you so much for your interest in the city of Cleveland Heights and for being here today. The mayor and city council are two stakeholders in our city government who at times have different perspectives. Could you share with us a time where you were in an organization that had two central stakeholders who had different perspectives and how you navigated that relationship?
Well, I think, just working at the airport, I think, my boss's perspective, and she was the chief financial officer, was to always keep costs down. She was very stringent when it came to spending and was always looking for red flags, if you will. She was very stringent in terms of conferences and warm climates, very stringent on what she felt was unnecessary spending on food for various meetings. But the chief of marketing had a different perspective. He felt that, traveling to various parts of the world to meet with airlines that may or may not have an interest in bringing their flights to the city of Cleveland. In order to get those carriers to consider Cleveland, you have to go visit those carriers, and some of them would be in various parts of the world. And those trips are expensive. I think about the chief of marketing who had a preference for flying first class and staying in nice accommodations. Those things would conflict, and we would have to, meet with him and discuss, what was, what we could afford, in terms of just hitting our mark in terms of our numbers. So there was always, a little bit of, conflict when it came to how much are we going to spend on marketing versus we need to keep, our costs in order. So I think for the most part, my supervisor as well as myself managed to keep, our costs in order. We got these trips down to maybe 1 or 2 a year. Where he would go out and meet with various carriers in order to bring new business to the city of Cleveland.
I really appreciate that you've made an effort to attend a number of our meetings. You're not yet in the role, but I'm sure that you've learned quite a bit from the sidelines. And so are there any particular areas that you think you would be interested in focusing in? Is there anything in particular that you're interested in making an effort to improve?
Well, before I actually made a physical appearance here, I looked at a series of YouTube videos during the month of December, just to kind of get a sense of some of the challenges here at the city of Cleveland Heights. And, there are a number of things that sort of fell behind, if you will. And I think my focus coming in would be to get some processes and some procedures put in place so we don't have that occurrence again. So there's some catch-up work that needs to be done in terms of the budget, the annual audit, and the CAFR. So my focus is going to be to fully understand the roles of the individuals that make up the finance department, but at the same time, these deadlines, some of these deadlines are critical in terms of state reporting and the deadlines that are pretty much governmental requirements.
And just one more thing, it's more of a statement rather than a question, so you could choose to react if you want to. But throughout the year, we have heard about a lot of folks who were not getting paid timely. And so I hope that whenever you're in the role, that's something that you will take an interest in and try to undercover. I'm sure that lots of things are situational, but take an interest in trying to understand if there are certain areas for improvement so that we can ensure that we can more quickly pay people. So thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome. Vice President Russell.
Yes. Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. I have a few questions. My first question is more of a clarifying question. On your resume, you stated that you had a master's degree in business administration from Case, and you had a bachelor's in finance and accounting from Akron. But on your application for employment, you said that you had a master's degree in finance from Case and a bachelor's in business from Akron. Which one is it? I think you reversed them. I just want to know which one is which.
So at Case Western Reserve, the entire class that I graduated with received an MBA or a master's in business administration. My area of focus at Case was finance and investment banking. So the name of the track that I pursued at Case was called BAFA, Banking and Finance. At the University of Akron, I received a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and there I studied finance and accounting.
Okay. So it was just kind of a flip-flop, that's all. Thank you for the clarification. Also, in your application, you stated that you were the Chief Finance Officer for CCBDD with an operating budget of $155 million and a revenue of $139 million. That leaves a budget deficit of $16 million. The County Board of Developmental Disabilities is prohibited by law from borrowing funds. Where did you get the $16 million from?
So our revenue sources totaled $139 million, but our annual operating budget was $155. So we had a deficit that year.
Yes, it leaves a deficit of $16 million.
And that would come from our reserve pool.
Reserve pool, okay. Thank you. You also stated in your application when you left CCBDD because of the new CEO hiring a new leadership team, yet the leadership team on CCBRDD top executive is the same, only one person was replaced. Can you explain that?
So my supervisor, her name was Kelly Petty. She retired, and a new CEO was appointed, and she did a full reorg. The IT director, myself, were replaced, and so she shuffled a number of executives. The chief operating officer was replaced. So there were about the entire leadership team changed. They brought in a new CEO. They brought in a new business director. So if you look at the website, 24 months ago, and you look at it today, the entire leadership team is different.
Yeah, I did. That's why I asked the question. So it only shows that only one change in the top tier of the positions that was filled, and it was from a long-term employee.
So you should see a new CEO. You should see a new business operations person. You should see a new chief operating officer. So the entire landscape of the leadership team changed.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of CCBDD, I retired from there for over 30 years, where I held a top leadership position as well as administration position for over 20 years in my tenure. I was one of the top negotiators in negotiating numerous contracts along with fostering outstanding relationships, which I still have today there. I am familiar with the management structure. All of the management employees work on a one-year renewal contract. Under the terms of their contract, CCBDD is obligated to provide salary and benefits to the employees for a full contract year unless the employee resigns or terminates for just cause. You left CCBDD after 7 months of your second year because you stated that the new CEO wanted a new team. As discussed, the only person who actually from the team that was left, that was replaced was yourself. I was wondering, was there anything specific that made you leave 5 months before the end of your contract?
Again, they were bringing in a new chief executive officer, and that particular individual did not want me as her chief financial officer.
Thank you. Talk about your experience creating budgets, managing financial resources, analysis, forecasting future needs, and developing long-term financial strategies.
So I've spent my career assembling budgets. Thinking back to my tenure with Cleveland Airport, I would meet annually with 35 different operating managers. We would discuss the upcoming year. We would discuss their financial needs. We would discuss potential hiring, the salary and benefits for that potential hire. We would go through a variety of different areas for new equipment, vehicle maintenance, building maintenance, custodial maintenance, electrical maintenance. We have our own fire department at the Cleveland Airport, where we would discuss the cost of new fire trucks, fire equipment, a workout room for the the firemen. We had a complete police division there. The budgets, the costs that we would we would incur for police presence. The marketing department, HR department. Again, 35 different operating budgets at Cleveland Airport. I was responsible for all 35 budgets and working as a financial consultant, meeting with these operating managers to understand their annual needs and also giving them guidance because a lot of them didn't have financial backgrounds and they really didn't have a good understanding of things that mattered and how their budget would be scrutinized and how to put together what I would consider to be a realistic budget versus, going after everything you think you deserve and really taking a really good financial, estimate of what you really need versus what you really want. So,
Thank you.
and I was on several occasions, I was acknowledged for my financial literacy and my timeliness and my ability to meet all financial deadlines.
Thank you so much. Just a couple more questions, or you want to move on?
please.
Okay. How do you how do you keep up with the changes in the laws that affect city finances?
Again, this going to different various conferences and financial education seminars and reading and just taking a sincere interest in my craft.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mind if I add something real quick? The Treasury Department and the State of Ohio Taxation Department, they do an excellent job of pushing out these notices. Hey, there's an upcoming legislative change to ORC 1.41. It's going to affect you this way. There's a very strong Ohio Municipal Finance Officials peer network group that I know meets, I'm pretty sure it's monthly, and anecdotally, I hate to get you in the middle of all this, probably less than half of them are CPAs on that side. And there's probably a distinct difference between accounting and finance, which I think Mr. Harrison's strength is in that financial part of it. I just want to make sure that got said. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did just a cursory look as well, and just to provide a little bit more detail to Vice President Russell's inquiry about sort of the timing of exiting employment at the Board of Developmental Disabilities. I did want to point out Mr. Hairston left in May of 2023, and my understanding, based on what's reported, at least publicly, the new CEO began in May of 2023 in that role. Sort of just as an indication, if a new leadership team is coming in and they want to bring in the people that they want to work with, that sort of lends credence if there was any doubt.
Thank you. He did answer that question for me. No. Thank you. Another question is, can you tell me about any projects or initiatives that you have implemented that were based on a GAAP and explain how they were successful? The general accepted accounting practices.
Well, I brought a copy of a project that I worked on that I circulated.
Okay.
And that project where the CEO, Mr. Ricky Smith, called me into his office and pointed out a grassy field that was right across the street, Brook Park, corner of Brook Park Road and Route 237. And basically gave me a perspectives in terms of our business development group wanted to put a facility there that would include a Burger King restaurant, a filling station, and a Circle K convenience store. Mm-hmm. And he asked me to put together a financial analysis because his interest was in terms of, is this financially, feasible? Is this something that we should undertake? Is this going to be financially beneficial to the city of Cleveland and Cleveland Airport? So basically, I put together a financial analysis that took a look at all the various revenue streams and how profitable each revenue stream would be over a course of 5 to 10 years, calculated the net present value and the internal rate of return for these various revenue streams. And then as we got closer and closer to actually undertaking this project, we realized that we were going to incur a traffic problem because those individuals that would be traveling east would have to make a left-hand turn into this airport, which would back up traffic. So we decided that we would need a turning lane. And the drawback to putting in a turning lane was the fact that it cost $600,000 to widen the road. So this threw off the profitability for this project. So we had to meet with the potential vendor and negotiate some type of financial agreement where we would actually be offered a loan. And this was a project that turned out very well. And the next time you're out at the airport, you will see that filling station because it's been there since 2015.
Well, Mr. Harrison, I would like to thank you so very much for answering my questions and being very direct with me. Coming from CCBDD for so many years, knowing just about everybody there, and I was there under Kelly Petty as well.
Okay.
And so I have a long history there, and so I thank you very much for your answers and your directness, and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, follow-up question, Ms. Larson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, President Kuda. If you are confirmed, will you be reviewing the internal controls that we currently have in this finance department? And I ask that because we had one or two issues last year where the backup for the authorization for a large payment to a vendor was not complete. And so I would like to know how you plan to address with your staff the internal controls that should be in place to protect the city from expenditures that weren't authorized.
Well, the first thing that I'd want to do is to understand all the vendors that do business with the city of Cleveland Heights, how these vendors are paid. Some vendors are paid monthly. Some vendors may be paid, twice a year, and get a full understanding of all payments and when those payments are, in other words, fully understand, just looking at your accounts payable ledger, fully understand what payments have been made in the past and their respective due dates. Because, the incident that you just described to me is unacceptable.
Thank you. Have you had an experience working with the payroll processor, ADP, that Cleveland Heights is using?
I've overseen the payroll function before. I've never specifically worked with ADP, but I have worked with payroll systems before.
And one last question. Oh.
Before you move on from that question, I did want to clarify, we have begun the process of transitioning to ADP. ADP is not yet doing the payroll for Cleveland Heights. I believe tentatively we are seeking a sort of a parallel payroll processing for maybe a month or so before we transition fully over to ADP.
All right. Thank you. That's news to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. The last question, Ohio Revised Code Section 117.171 requires a departing fiscal officer produce a certificate containing inventory of items, accounts, and other information prescribed by the Auditor of State. Certificate should be signed by the departing fiscal officer. If confirmed, will you please request that this document is available to you?
Yes,
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Mr. Hairston, what authority I take it you've discussed with the mayor, do you have to staff your department? I know we're down a financial analyst and maybe somebody else. Is that going to be your purview?
Yes, one of the first things that I'd like to do is to meet with everyone that's on staff, understand their roles and responsibilities, and look for any deficiencies that I see in terms of the work that needs to be done and the deadlines that need to be met, specifically the annual audit and the annual CAFR and the annual budget. Those are three, what I perceive to be three key deliverables: the audit, the budget, and the audit and the CAFR. Sorry.
And if you determine that you need more staff, are you going to be the person doing the hiring?
I would like to actually, put together a panel. Maybe someone from HR, and maybe another finance person and myself. Bring that individual in, and the panel would ask, different questions of that individual in order to determine if they're the right person and the right fit.
Okay, very good. The mayor was talking about, the room to grow. This was earlier. Describe your willingness and your experience with looking at other cities and how they do things as you try to find best practices. And by that, I mean, I'll just speak for myself. When I look at Shaker's budget materials and Lakewood's budget materials, they far exceed the materials that we've been given. And I would like to think, especially, when somebody's new in the job, that you would have that same willingness to look at other municipalities and their materials, because council's the budget authority, as you well know, and this ends up being what we have to look at and digest.
Well, I think the fact that a lot of the financial materials today, thinking back when my career first started, which goes back a little bit, a lot of the materials, financial materials, were not available online. But today that has changed. So a lot of the materials that are available for different municipalities are online and easily accessible, which would make benchmarking, taking a look at Cleveland Heights and benchmarking against those different municipalities and see in terms of, in terms of their total budget, how much is allocated towards salaries and benefits? That's one of the first things that I always take a look at.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm more talking about the format, because that's what we have to look at, the formatting. That's our first, digestible, visual. So how would you describe your skills at, I don't know how to put this, using terminology that people that aren't financial experts can understand?
I think breaking it down in the simplest of forms, because even though a lot of the folks, and I shouldn't say a lot, some of the folks that you interact with don't have a finance background, are not trained in finance. But I think every day we all live with our own personal financial situation. We all have financial responsibilities in terms of how much dollars we allocate towards living, transportation, food, leisure. So we all have our own personal little budgets that we manage on an ongoing basis. And it all relates to that, because this is just a bigger budget, the bigger numbers, but it's the same allocation.
Oh, I know that, and I actually taught financial literacy at a high school, and I learned a lot just teaching it to the kids. And it is something that we all do, and a skill that really everybody needs. Any other questions, follow-ups? Oh, yeah.
So I'll just speak for myself. One thing that I count on in a finance director is someone that has the fortitude to push back when either council or the mayor is thinking about spending some money and it's not the most prudent thing. You sort of touched on that earlier, that you had to tell, I don't know if it was council, whoever, that's not the smartest thing to be doing financially. Can you promise to us that you'll exercise that kind of fortitude and professional judgment in dealing with us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that variance explanations are very key. If you look at, 1 year we spent $5 million on this particular item, and this year we're spending $7 million, and you want to know why the additional $2 million? What's going on here? There could be a great reason, like, the cost of this particular material went up and there's not much we can do about it. Or, so I call that a price variance, but there could be a volume variance. This particular individual wants to take this item and have a few extra on the shelf, and that's not always the best use of funds. So I think when I present numbers and you take a look at these numbers, a great variance explanation should accompany the difference between these two numbers that explains, to you thoroughly why this number has gone up from 5 to 7 or from 5 to 8. There should be a good reason for it. And if there's not a good reason, then it's a waste of spending.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that. And this relates to what President Kuda said. If you look at the budget book, and I'm not sure whether it's Shaker or Lakewood, they have highlighted every account where there is, let's say, more than a 5% variance. And there's a footnote explaining why that variance occurred. And that's something that's missing from the reporting that we're getting. But I'm not sure that you directly answered that you can say that is not a smart financial move that you're proposing to make.
I can do that for you.
All right. And that's also not only to council, but if someone from the administration is suggesting that we can do this financially, you'll be able to say no to whoever.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Or at least it's not a good idea. I don't know that you could actually say no. But all right, very good. Any other? Yes, Vice President Russell.
Yes. Would you be able to work with the administration and come up with maybe a 5-year vision plan for the budget for our city, kind of a roadmap of what you can see and how we could move forward productively?
So like a 5-year budget plan?
Yes.
Yes, that's a project that I could undertake.
Thank you so much. And just a comment, you will not have any problems about us with furniture because we have been looking for chairs since we've been on council, and so have the residents. We have been talking about brand-new chairs. We have not gotten them yet, so I am hoping in your budget, you put a line item for council chairs as well as chairs for our chambers.
Funding was
do.
already approved.
All right, any other questions?
Just for clarity, there's a couple of things that I heard, and I just want to make sure that we're not confusing you at all. Any requests that you're given based on reporting, based on formatting, based on anything is going to come from council as a whole, not individually. I've heard that 3 times for 3 separate requests of how people would like things. We haven't discussed that. So I want to make sure that coming in, this is something that council needs to work on in terms of getting those requests so that they're centrally coming from the council as a body and not from individuals, so that you're not receiving these and having expectations because you heard something from one council person that it's an expectation from this council. That is not how this works. And so if you have any concerns or questions about our formatting, what other cities are doing, any 5-year budget reporting, feel free to come back to this council and make sure that it's a clear request from all 7 of us, or at least a majority of this body. That's something that as a council, we need to make a commitment of, not just to you, but to every staff member and administration, that these requests are coming from one voice, that you're not getting multiple voices asking for things that the council and the body has not. And that's something that I would like us to continue to work on. It's January. That's something we absolutely need to tighten up on because I'm hearing expectations and requests when we haven't discussed them. So let's tighten that up before we start communicating with administrative staff to make sure this is something that the body is requesting, because I don't want him preparing a report because one person asked. That's not how this works. So I want to make sure we start out with the right tone. I don't have a problem with some of the suggestions, but let's talk about it as a body, send that request over, whether it's through our leadership or what that looks like. But I don't want any more direct requests to staff members that we haven't discussed. I don't want to hear for the first time as we're asking a member of this staff. That is not how this council works. And I don't want to set that tone today. So if there's any adjustments we want to make to reporting on the financial side, it needs to be discussed as a council, and then we'll send that request over. This isn't an individual decision that we need to be making. And so let's clean this up this month. Thank you.
All right, I think what I heard Council Vice President was talking about willingness, and just so you know, our protocol is we copy the mayor. Like if we were going to make any kind of request from you, we always copy the mayor, and obviously that would be, between the two of you. I know a lot of times, I'll just ask for a piece of information that I would not clear with council, but it's just some clarification, and certainly we're not doing it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
You did state you have worked with council before,
Yes, I have.
so I'm quite sure you're very familiar with municipal government.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions from council?
There aren't. I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to consider the appointment of a public official.
Second.
All right, any discussion? No discussion. Call the roll, please.
Maddox.
Aye.
Posh.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
Kuda.
Aye.
Cobb.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Petrus.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. President, is this a situation where you will be coming back and you will still have?
What I thought we could do is just go over to the conference room now. Is that okay?
Oh, my only concern is whether or not Mr. Hairston needs to stay or if he can continue on with his day.
No, we wanted to meet with Mr. Hairston. Did I have you right? What was your
Well,
expectation?
no, our expectation was that we would have a conversation amongst ourselves. I don't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I don't know if anyone else had anything that they wanted to ask him
In
an executive session.
Okay, got it.
I don't. I'm satisfied.
I
that he
misunderstood.
answered.
So you're
Sure.
talking just the 7 of us?
Yeah, so we could have a conversation.
Got it.
And so that's why I just wanted to, that was my
Thank you.
understanding
Yeah,
as well. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on whether or not we should remain available or if that conversation will not require sort of a reconvening in public session
Right.
with the 3 of us.
Let me just ask the law director something real quick. Director Hannah? So if we go into executive session, we still have to come back here after executive session to adjourn the meeting? Yeah. Okay.
You guys could also just have your executive session in here. It would make it a lot easier.
That's what I was going to request.
I'd be fine with wherever, go ahead.
President,
Yeah.
speaking for myself, I think that it would be easier to sit at a table where we can actually speak with one another.
Yeah. Is everybody okay with that? All right. So
Do we need to keep him around?
not unless you had that, some reason for that. Okay, so we're going to go into executive session, and for anybody watching, when we come back, we're just going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. All right, we're coming out of executive session at 12:53, and this meeting is adjourned.